Welcome to the Backyard Professor live show on Sunday. We're going on an afternoon this afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we are going to have Mr. Steve Bassett, who is one of the veteran UFO researchers slash historians slash scholars on the aliens, the UFOs, the UAPs, whatever you're comfortable with. We're starting 4 o'clock today. It is Sunday, and we are going to have a screaming discussion, learn who Steve Bassett is, what this gentleman stands for, pick his brain, learn more about this phenomenal issue that we are all, quite frankly, excited and thrilled, mystified, and encouraged to look into. Want to welcome everyone in the audience. Welcome to all of you new subscribers. Hit the like button, subscribe. We're on a roll. Let's bring in Mr. Steve Bassett. Hello, young man. How are you doing tonight?
Kerry?
Yes.
Your entire introduction was like doubled up. It was completely echoed all the way through.
Really? Is it echoing still?
Now I'm doubling up. It's got a delay in repeating it. Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put some headphones on. That seems to help. Let me see if this will help.
Oh.
Okay, now I can hear you. I can hear you better.
No, there's a huge delay. There is a delay.
Do you have an extra window open? It's on his end. I sound fine, they're saying. There's not an echo in chat.
Good point. Oh, all right. There's a it's not a it's actually a delay.
That's interesting.
It's not an echo, it's a delay.
Okay. Hold on just one sec. Your audio was removed. I wonder if it's my mic. How does this sound? Is that better? Do you hear the delay now?
Oh, one moment.
Sure.
One moment, please.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Go ahead and say something.
Okay, I am thrilled you're here.
You're not delayed. I am.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to go out? You want to go out and come back in? You want to try that?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
That's it.
He will be right back, folks. Having a little bit of a technical difficulty. We're starting because we had a little time differential that he did not realize, and so it's all good. I appreciate y'all being here. We're a couple hours early. It's all good. We're going to have a great show. Hello, Tom the Alien, Tom Mandich. Good to see you. Oh, thank you, Yeshua Zion. Yeah, it's the men in black, except I'm in green. I did not wear my suit coat. We're trying to be a little less formal, but okay, here we go. Let's see if he's here. Okay, you're back, young man.
Okay, you sound fine. My delay is gone. You know, I think there was a window behind mine. I think there was two, but they were behind. They were staggered. They weren't like tabs, right? I have never had that happen before. No problem. We're in business. So let's start again.
Okay, introducing the fabulous Steve Bassett on the Backyard Professor live show. Now, let me tell you something. I have been watching Steve. I'm relatively new to this as far as the broadcasting video, and I have watched many of Steve. He came highly recommended several months ago, probably Steve, from one of my own wonderful audience members. I have the best audience in the world. These guys just rock and roll. And someone said, hey, you would benefit listening to Steve Bassett. So I looked you up, and I have. And so this honor is all mine to have you on my show. I'm going to pick your brain. So tonight we're going to hear from your wisdom. Now, you have started a very important, a very useful, a very powerful program to help move the disclosure forward. We would like to hear you go ahead and give us an introduction of who you are, Mr. Steve Wonderful Bassett, and about your organization, and then we'll start talking.
Paradigm Research Group is simply an activist entity that was set up in '96. I registered as a lobbyist at the time. Nobody else had done that, so it got some attention, got written up in the Washington Post. And from then on, I was able to do things. I wasn't able to do much lobbying because nobody wanted to talk to a UAP, ET lobbyist, I assure you. But for the last 29 years, I've been doing anything and everything I can with the resources that I have had, and it's not been a lot, to advance the disclosure process. And when I say disclosure process, I'm using the term that I coined back around 2001 or something. It's capital D disclosure. It's the process leading to the formal confirmation of the ET presence by the head of state, by our president. That's capital D disclosure. Small d disclosure, it's been going on forever. It's been going on for 77 years, mostly by citizens trying to get the truth when a government said there was nothing there. So then that continues and will continue. But capital D disclosure, we needed because we needed a prize for the activist movement to go after. Without a prize, if you have a defined goal, you cannot bring people together in an activist movement. You just can't say, look, we need peace on earth, so join up. No, you got to have a goal, Civil Rights Act, whatever, right to vote for women. We didn't have this in this field. There wasn't much activism prior to 1990 anyway. So around 2000, I said, here's the goal. We need the formal acknowledgement by the President of the United States, or possibly by another head of state of maybe one of the nuclear 9 nations, and the other will follow. That would be capital D disclosure, a formal confirmation, which means that in due course, the entire population of the world would know that, yeah, guess what? There are other beings out there. There are other planets. There are other civilizations, and we have visitors now and have had them in the past. So that's been the goal all along. And I've done everything that I could do. I've done over 2,000 interviews. I've spoken at scores of conferences. I've held conferences. And most significantly, probably, I conducted and produced a mock congressional hearing in 2013 at the National Press Club, which is right upstairs from my office, in which we brought 42 witnesses from 10 countries in to testify under a, quote, mock oath to 6 former members of Congress to show the Congress what it would be like. And it was very successful and very expensive. And so I did that. So I'm doing what I can to advance the movement forward. I'm also very big into networking. I'm constantly trying to network people together, and also very big on helping to ensure that the citizens that have carried all this water all these years, that have done the research, done the journalism, while the mainstream journalists and the mainstream scientists and the politicians just stood back and go, I don't know, that they get acknowledged. That they get appreciated, because they cannot be left in the rearview mirror as the mainstream moves in. So this is kind of what Paradigm Research Group does. It recently converted to a nonprofit, 501c3, because I've got to start raising more money, because disclosure is about to happen, and disclosure is nothing more than they're here. Then the real work begins. That's when everybody can jump in if they want to. There's a whole list of possible things. Then the world changes. So I'm now a nonprofit. I helped found with Dan Harari another nonprofit 501c3 called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.org. And that is based out of Los Angeles. And it's all about networking the film industry with the UAP, ET, citizen world to make content, to create documentaries and whatever the hell else, and get the message right. We're up to 200 members, and networking is taking place. Things are happening. So there's that. I'm also working with other groups like the New Paradigm Institute, and so forth. And then there's various projects that I do. It's all in support of getting the confirmation from the president. And that's why I became a nonprofit, and I'm already starting the process. PRG becomes less of an activist entity and more of a think tank, where I'm going to gather people together to provide information, white papers, things like that, to influence the post-disclosure world with some activism as well. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I am a political activist. I'm a disclosure advocate, and populist, I would say. My goal is very much to speak to just people, and not necessarily the elite. But I'm starting to get some meetings on the Hill, and I'm very much involved in, I think, the next hearing that's going to take place. So that's my thing.
This is very encouraging because I just watched in fact, I made a video just a couple of days ago where Danny Sheehan has come out, and he is the founder of the New Paradigm Institute, which I have jumped into as well. And he is also saying that it is really important now because of the previous stigmas that I'm sure you're well aware of, which is so unfortunate. You probably had some kick in your own teeth against this subject, but now it's time to invite and bring forward the academics, invite and bring forward the scientists. Let's get the entire cross section of humanity involved with this. And I am impressed with what you're doing, and I'm jumping on your bandwagon next. So here I come. This is exciting, and it's what it has to be done. That's all it is. None of us are getting any younger, as I have several of my own audience telling me. So the big question on everyone's mind, if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes, just tell us what your thoughts are on the Ross Coulthart disclosure video from last night. I know it's the buzz of the day. It'll probably be the buzz for the next several weeks. I am relatively new to this as far as broadcasting on YouTube, and I have a true consummate, knowledgeable man here to give us your take. Please take it away and tell us all about this Ross Coulthart issue.
Well, first of all, videos are dropping everywhere. Greer's has dropped a couple. He's got another one, a major one, coming up in a day or two. He may have 4, 5, 6 witnesses. So it's not that's just one video. All right. And it was triggered by a witness coming forward. But there are other witnesses coming forward. It's over the last 2 years, we've been making extreme progress. And the number of witnesses keeps growing because the more witnesses that come forward, the more witnesses that are willing to come forward. And I think it's not a shock if I tell you that the number of people that have been involved in the UAP ET issue as from the government, within and related to the government over the years, is in thousands and thousands and thousands. All right.
Oh, wow.
Many of those have passed away. So the number of people inside that are technically witnesses is a huge number. Now, the vast majority are not coming out. They have arrangements and understandings and non-disclosure agreements and what have you. And they may feel it's not appropriate. But the nature of the truth embargo and what's been happening, more and more of these individuals feel it is time to come out, but it's still not easy. But they are coming out. And now you can hardly keep up with it. I should say that I encourage people to try to always use witness whenever possible. Whistleblower is kind of catchy, and it gets people's attention a little bit. But in fact, the vast majority they're just witnesses. A whistleblower is a totally different thing. If you're a whistleblower, that means that you are coming forward regarding either illegal, corrupt, or inappropriate activities happening within your world, your workspace. And you have not been able to get attention to it within your world, your workspace. And so you are breaking probably some sort of agreement, contract, NDA, and you're coming forward and blowing the whistle. And generally, nobody wants to be a whistleblower. It's not a good gig. There have been some laws passed in the last recent years to try to help, because whistleblowers were really having a tough time, but it hasn't exactly made it easy. It's still brutal. And no matter what government laws are passed, the ability to threaten somebody now anonymously is just trivial, right? You could SWAT people and they can't even track you down in a lot of cases. So you don't want to be a whistleblower. So I encourage people, they're witnesses, unless they specifically say, I'm a whistleblower, right? And there's only been a couple like that. The rest are all witnesses. Okay, so they're coming forward like crazy. And everyone, there's a certain response. We've gotten much more sophisticated in terms of vetting them. There's a lot more knowledge. There's a much larger knowledge base, a lot of sharp people involved in this issue now. They have connections and inside connections. And so it's a lot easier to vet people like that than it were 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So they're coming forward, and by and large, I believe they're being vetted, and they're primarily solid. Now, one or two fakes or posers are going to make it through. It's not foolproof, but it's not that big a deal. It's just the way it is. It's going to happen. So just people need to be alert to that possibility, not lose their mind, right? Not assume that everybody is not real. Right now, the people that are getting to Ross Coulthart or even Greer and others are almost certainly legit, right? Because these people know the difference. All right, so one of the recent developments was the emergence of a witness named Barber, who apparently has a substantial background dealing in this issue within the government, crash retrieval, which is one of the major areas of intrigue. It was crash retrieval that was primary to David Grush's testimony when he came out on June the 5th of 2023. And of course, it goes all the way back to Roswell. Do we have crash vehicles, and do we have the bodies? Well, we know that because Roswell has been proven solidly. I mean, the evidence is enormous. The amount of interviews that have been done are in the hundreds and hundreds by people like Donald Schmidt, Tom Carey, Stanton Friedman, and others. So Roswell was a crash, and they had bodies. Well, basically, Grush just confirmed that. As it happens, there's been more than one crash, and more than and bodies from those as well. And so that is central to Grush's testimony. So people are thinking crash vehicles. Now, there's a book that just came out. Hang on. Recently.
Oh, good. You're a man after my own heart. You're grabbing a book. Yes. Now, this is the Steve Bassett we love right here.
So this book is the second edition of Magic Eyes Only by Ryan Wood, the son of Dr. Bob Wood, who's a researcher, goes back 50 years, and Ryan goes back 30. And in the first book, Magic Eyes Only, he provided what evidence was available regarding 75 possible crashes, which includes the famous ones, but a lot of others that are less known. In the second edition, it's up to 105 crashes. Okay,
really?
Magic Eyes Only, second edition. So now, obviously, the evidence is varies, and in some cases it's kind of thin. But the point is that I assure you, there have been a number of crashes. So that is now in play. So when this gentleman came forward as a crash retrieval, there have been a number like that, but some of them, like Clifford Stone came out a long time ago, and it was a much tougher gig to come out and say, I was on the crash retrieval team. Now it would not be so striking. Cliff has passed, unfortunately. This gentleman is in the genre. And so, okay, he got a lot of attention from Ross Coulthart. And so it turns out he had a photo, but then it turns out he had a video. And so Ross put it up. And that's perfectly appropriate. Except, and he knows this as well as anybody, in terms of the knowledgeable people, whether you're an active researcher or an author, podcaster, journalist, whatever, or just somebody, just a regular civilian that has got a library, right? They've been following this, onto it. They're excited about it. They're constantly looking for the good stuff, the great stuff, the smoking gun. There's really no such thing as a smoking gun, frankly. And so anything comes out, there's a high level of expectation. Even with Grush's testimony, there were a lot of people who said, it's not that big a deal. Okay. And
that was huge, though.
It was huge.
Yeah.
And so this particular video, for those that see it, is not striking, and it's hard to kind of visualize it. But there's no reason to dismiss it out of hand. All right. Just because it doesn't look like what you expect. And so I certainly give it the benefit of the doubt. I give Barbara and Ross the benefit of the doubt right now. And so it's one more piece of evidence. But people are wanting that thing that's going to close the deal. Okay. No, that's not the way it works. The deal has already been proven. The ET presence has been proven many times over. But establishing the evidential body that will trigger the congressional action in the disclosure event, that is not any single thing. It is a combination of a lot of testimony and other evidence, keeping in mind that the government actually has incredible evidence, but it's not available to us. And so it was an important video, and Ross has done a tremendous amount of work. It's just one part of a very large body of work that he has done. He's now one of the, if not the, maybe the leading journalist on this issue. There are others, though, that are very prominent.
I suspect so. Yeah, I suspect so.
But there's another video far more important than that one involving Ross. Let's talk about that.
All right, dude.
Because I think a couple of days before the crash retrieval video brought forward by the witness Barber, Ross Coulthart went on a podcast. And he was joined by Luis Elizondo, right? Which is pretty cool. What was the podcast? It was the podcast for Donald Trump Jr., who has his own podcast now, and it has quite an audience, as you can imagine. He's Donald Trump Jr. I think he's got 1 million subscribers. So this was seen by a lot of people. And I encourage people to go find it and watch it, because this was a very, very telling hour and a half. So what?
And both Coulthart and Elizondo was on Don Jr.'s
at the same time.
Okay. At the same time. Wow, that's big.
In that podcast, well, first of all, let's preface this. Prior to that podcast, I forget how long. It wasn't much prior to that podcast. Elizondo put out a public statement, which is out there. You can find it easily, calling on the new White House to have a UFO czar. This is a phrase that, the czar phrase gets used. I'm not crazy about that phrase, but whatever. There was a person designated to involve and kind of oversee the White House's options and interactions with respect to the issue, which is, of course, very huge. And Mr. Elizondo offered himself up to be that czar. He's not the only one that would like that job. There are about 5 or 6. Okay. And that is by itself extraordinary. I mean, for people 40 years ago would be stunned to learn this, right? I can't believe it. So that he's there. And then Coulthart is there, who is, of course, the one who brought Grush, who was one of the key people to announce Grush to the world and everything else. So these are 2 very heavy hitters about this issue, non-trivial, talking to Donald Trump Jr. And he is totally receptive to all of this. Not a problem at all. In fact, he asked his father a question about it during the very first campaign, because obviously there were interest in his father, said something. And since then, the president-elect has been asked a number of times about this issue. So it's not new to him. His responses are never particularly comprehensive. But now, just a few days before the inauguration, his son brings on Elizondo and Coulthart. And as they're having this back and forth about what's going on and what could going on, you've got Elizondo saying things like, well, your dad, right? I think maybe it said something about this. And Coulthart is saying, well, your dad may want to do this or whatever. And they're referring to his father as your dad. And so let me just say, there is no way that Donald Trump Jr. has Coulthart and Elizondo on that show to talk about that if his father doesn't want that to happen, that his father probably is happy that it is happening, right? And it is prefaced to something else. It is certainly preparing for something else. And so what that confirms is something that we've sort of figured out, is that the president-elect is onto this. He has to be, of course, because the issue for several years has been led in this Congress. Initially, it was led by a fairly laid conservative. I say conservative, fairly, well, the word is, I don't know what the word, conservative, not political conservative, Senate members of the Senate Intel Committee, right? Very reserved, being careful, but not, a couple of years after they engaged it, the House jumped in, and these were very conservative Republican members of Congress who happened to be on the same committee. And led by Tim Burchett, they jumped into this issue big time and aggressively, right? In other words, they're calling it out. Burchett is going on television saying, there's extraterrestrials here and so forth. So it's very aggressive. And these people are very, very much behind the president, the former president and the president-elect. And so he knows that this thing is happening. He knows something is going on. All right. And now that we've seen what took place. That show was far more significant to the disclosure process than the crash retrieval video. And so because of that, Carrie, I have a very strong suspicion that Trump is going to bring this up in the inaugural address. If he brings it up in any way, however light, if he refers to it in any way, he puts a rocket underneath every single process underway right now. It takes it to a whole nother level, and confirms something else that I've become pretty confident about, is that given that Nancy Mace is going to have another hearing shortly after the inauguration, that she's made it clear she wants the nuclear weapons shut down. Witnesses Bob Salas, who I'm working with, and I've talked to her about it, and I'm going to help do that. I've also presented all the information about these witnesses to the entire Senate Intel Committee. I did speak briefly with Senator Gillibrand. She said she'd like to talk to Captain Salas, and that's fine as a kind of preliminary. And he's willing to fly out and talk to her. So we're headed for another hearing. We're headed for, finally, after 67 years and 30 years of effort on the part of these witnesses, see them sit down in front of a committee under oath and talk about when our nuclear missiles were shut down with a craft hovering over the base in a sequential way that is technically impossible. All right. And it's going to be huge. All right. Yeah. So and they know that's coming. The Trump administration, the president-elect Trump knows this is coming. People around him knows this is coming. And of course, his son knows this is coming. And so I am really feeling like I would be shocked if we have not had the formal confirmation, say 45 days from the inauguration. Wow. That fast. It's simply coming on. And the thing that really convinces me of this is that while all of this was happening on the ground, something was happening up in the sky. And what was happening in the sky was, for those that maybe are not familiar with the history of this issue, is called a UFO flap, or now you would call it a UAP flap, which is the less awkward term. UAP is fine. UFO got stigmatized. It's back. It's out. Don't worry about it. But UFO, UAP flap. And these have happened over the years since Roswell. And all they are is a lot of sightings happening over a period of time. All right. So maybe 2 or 3 weeks, you've got people being seen in multiple locations, and it seems like a flood of reports coming in, a lot of extra activity. They call it a flap. The most famous UFO flap, I think, is the one in July of 1952. And this, and almost exactly 5 years after.
I was hoping you would bring this one up. Yes.
Absolutely. I don't think it was a coincidence. It was 5 years after Roswell. Okay.
No.
So Roswell happens. Truman makes a decision. Well, and ultimately we can't tell the public. And they keep it under wraps. And while events are taking place, the government's kind of just staying out of it. And then I guess perhaps our visiting friends decided, you're not getting the message here. Right. I mean, you got a body, you got craft. What are you doing? Right. And so they start flying over DC, the capital itself, for like 9-10 days. And you didn't have all the cameras we have now, but it was seen. It made a big deal. Planes were launched. There's nothing they could do about it. They had no real explanation. Ultimately, they tried to pass the idea that it was headlights being seen in the sky because of an inversion, some sort of inversion in the atmosphere that had never, ever happened before and has never happened since. All right. And that's the best they could do. General Sanford did a video. He did an interview, and that was a broadcast that was not particularly impressive, but he kind of addressed it with some legitimacy, and it was over. Lasted 9 days. The Robertson panel followed about 5 months later that basically said, look, let's just stop it. Let's just get the public out of this, right? Let's just get it out of this. It's not a threat. And later we learned about that classified report. So that was then. Now, 70 years go by, and all of a sudden we're starting to see a lot of activity. And I consider this UFO flap to extend all the way back to the incidents where something was swarming around our naval ships in the Pacific, particularly off San Diego. And how many times this happened, we don't know, but it got filmed. And by filmed, I mean some seaman on the ship who happened to have an iPhone filmed it because they have phones too. And so whatever the protocol was, this got out. And eventually it was shown. It got onto the web, and we're seeing this film. It's quite interesting. And it was interesting because they didn't shoot him down, right? This is a Navy warship.
Right.
And it's at night, and you got things flying around it, and you don't know what they are. You shoot them down. If it's a drone could sink the ship. So they did nothing. And I'm going, well, that's interesting. It got even more interesting when on May the 17th, the very first hearing on this subject since 1968. Okay, this is May the 17th, I'm sorry, of 2022. Okay, that's 54 years.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you next.
First hearing, 54. It was a basic hearing. A gentleman by the name of Bray and Moultrie came up. They were running the UAP task force. They were asked some questions. I think it was a subcommittee of the Intel Committee. I need to confirm that. And they were asked some basic questions. It wasn't particularly groundbreaking. Everybody wanted more. But they showed that video. And I was stunned. I'm simply, this video had been on the net. It was getting a lot of attention. And they showed it. Why? Why did they need to show that video at that hearing? They just need to get some updates from Bray and Moultrie, ask a few questions that they couldn't answer. Mr. Gallagher, Representative Gallagher, got aggressive and asked him about Malmstrom, which, of course, is one of the nuclear shutdown cases. And, of course, even if he knew about it, he couldn't say anything. So he said, I have not heard of it, whatever. So it was pretty light there, except they showed this video. And then I think it was Bray, that tried to debunk it. In other words, he kind of showed, well, no, it's a trick of lights, a lens thing, whatever. And I'm going, what is, you're asking this guy to try to debunk that video that shouldn't even be shown at all. What in the hell is going on here? And ultimately I decided and concluded the reason they showed that video is because it was stirring the pot on the internet. People were watching it, and a lot of people were pointing out, why in the hell haven't they shot those things down, blown them out of the sky?
Right.
And so it was becoming a problem. And so they felt, we'll bring it into that the hearing, the briefing hearing with Bray and Moultrie, and he'll debunk it, and that will cool it down. Okay, so that was May 17th of 2022. What starts happening shortly after that is more of these things start turning up in other places. And it was it was part of the background noise. There's so much happening, so many things coming forward. What the hell, right? You can't keep up with it. But it was happening. And it was notably, a lot of this stuff was happening over military facilities or nuclear-related sites or sensitive sites, which is non-trivial, okay?
Exactly.
So this is happening. It's getting referred to. It's turning up here and there, but it's not yet having an impact until about 3 months ago, when all of a sudden the number of things in the sky, the number of what we'll call orbs, what do you mean what hell they call it, plasma orbs, whatever, piloted, not piloted, it doesn't matter, increased in number. and locations. And they were primarily over military bases. And this started getting people's attention.
And
right?
high population centers. New Jersey is not a country bumpkin place.
Well,
There
yeah,
are a lot of people there.
this is true. So, and that was important because they were showing up in the western area, and then they kept moving east, and then they started showing up over facilities in the east. But in the dense population areas, you may have a base, okay,
Exactly.
and you may be wanting to fly over that base, but there's still this huge community out there that's going to see it. Yeah. And so that really escalated the situation, and it started getting enormous attention. Now, in 1952, there were no cell phones. There were no smartphones. There were not millions of people walking around with a camera in their hip all the time. And so when these things started happening a couple of years ago, they're getting filmed constantly, and lengthy videos being put up naturally on the web. And so the thing is just spreading like crazy. And so what I suggest is this is the biggest UFO flap of all time. Now comes the $64,000 question. What is the government going to do with that? I mean, in 1952, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't stop it, and it went away. And then they just, breathed the sigh and said, okay, we're okay. But it wasn't going away. It was going on week after week after week. And so the government was in an impossible position. And I am saying that was intentional, that the ETs were putting on a show. And it wasn't a drone show like they can do now. 10,000 drones in Singapore, goes up, makes these incredible designs. I'm impressed. Right. That's cool, but we know what they are, right? They were little drones and they got GPS. It's cool. Now this is something else, right? And these plasma effects, what we can call them orbs, you can call them plasma balls, whatever the hell. I would suggest that they are probably no different than the Foo Fighters. Right, Foo meaning fire, that were recorded throughout the theaters in the World War II as they're flying along with our airplanes.
Yeah,
they're not shooting them down. They're not doing. They're just flying, and they're being reported. Foo Fighters, balls of light. I wouldn't surprise you with the exact same thing, because the ETs have the ability to manipulate this kind of physics. All right. And it was a war going on, so nothing really came from it. But after Roswell, the reports were reviewed, and it became part of the history. Foo Fighters. Well, these are Foo Fighters. Only they're not just flying along with some airplanes. They're all over the damn place. They're over these cities and these bases enough that we started hearing about flights being rerouted. All right. So this is a big deal. And the government can do nothing about it. They cannot stop it. They cannot shoot them down. Okay. And so, and then of course, everything else has been happening. We've been moving towards disclosure. It's getting more and more intense. We've had, by then, we've had 7 hearings or 6 hearings, right?
I think 6, yeah.
And
but
so,
the other thing, if I can just quickly interject too, I specifically pinpointed this because I was going to do a video on it. And I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But while it is true that the major news outlets have basically dropped the story, I have a lot of friends in those places who are still contacting me saying, Carrie, the drones have not stopped.
You're still seeing phenomena.
The discussion of them has, but this did not halt. They're still happening in even more cities. So,
well, I don't know about more cities. I know the media generated hundreds of articles. I've got 200 on my site, my print media archive. I'll show you that later. It's legitimate stuff, not frivolous. It's 200. So they covered it intensely. Okay. But after a while, it's no longer news. It's like, well, they were there yesterday. Well, here they, and also you're moving towards the inauguration and so forth. And so I'm not surprised they stepped back. And I kind of assume that maybe the phenomena had also slowed a little bit. If it's going on at all, that's a good thing. I watch enough social media to know that I do not think it's spread to more cities, and I don't think it's at the level it was. And it
Well,
probably
I'm just thinking, I've got friends down in Utah who said, "Oh, hey, they're here now too."
okay, all right.
In Hill, is it Hill Air Force Base? It's at Utah. Anyway, so that's what I meant. Even just one more city is.
Well,
But yeah, the activity might have slowed, but it has not stopped at all. It's still happening.
Well, I hope it is still going on, but it is not going on at the level of intensity, and it doesn't really have to. All right. So
probably not. Huh?
So let's go further with this.
Okay.
So the government can't do anything about it. The reports are pouring in. Video is turning up on the web. The media is covering it. What do? You could do nothing. In other words, you could answer no questions. No, we don't. We're not going to talk about that. Forget it. Don't ask me. I'm not going to talk about it. That's not going to go well. All right. So you're going to have to engage it somehow. You can't shoot them down. All right. So what do? They have almost no options at all. It's brutal, right? It's absolutely brutal. They're in an impossible position. And I'm suggesting that was intentional, that this activity on the ETs was absolutely intentional to put them in an impossible position, to escalate the situation, which is getting pretty far along, to ensure that disclosure does take place as soon as possible. So, and so
the ETs want the disclosure.
ETs, okay. And so, but it gets interesting because the government did choose. There was one thing the government could do, and it was the only thing they could do. And it wasn't a particularly good solution, but it was better than nothing. And so what I think our government did was instruct military facilities, wherever it was appropriate, certainly any facilities that are underneath the phenomena, but even nearby, get our own drones up there and into that phenomena, get it up there, right? And get the good stuff out, right? Because they've got drones we've never even seen, okay? Launch them up there so that when people are looking at this stuff, they're seeing some drones that are kind of clearly drones. And therefore, it's drones. And then they started calling it a drone swarm. And so the game they're playing is this. If you see one or two drones, then they're all drones, even the stuff that most people would say, not a drone. And so this way they're masking it to some degree, but it's obviously not that significant, but it is something. And so now they've got it calling drones. So the media's calling it drones. So it's a drone thing. Okay, fine. That does take some pressure off the government, but we're not talking about a few drones. We're talking about a lot of drones, multiple locations. So it's still an awful situation. How awful? Well, eventually the defense correspondents confronted the DOD. At least two briefings, but the one with Kirby was the most important one. It was a female journalist that made a little history there. So she is questioning him. He calls on her. And it's strike one, strike two, strike three. Strike one. She says, Mr. Kirby, you say that this is a drone. These are drones we're dealing with here. Are they our drones? And he says, no. Strike one. Okay, strike one. All right. Because because he can't say they are, because then the next question is, what in the hell are we doing flying drones all over our military facilities? What's the program? What's the purpose? What's going on? Okay. And he can't answer that. Okay. No. So he has to say no. Okay. The next question was obvious. Well, if they're not ours, are they in other countries?
Yeah.
And he says, no. Strike two. Now, this is a particularly bad strike. One of those, you swung at a pitch way outside, right? And I nearly fell down.
Right.
No. First of all, there's no way he knows. There is no way that he or the Department of Defense knows that none of these drones are foreign origin. The only way would be to take up helicopters, chase every one of them down, shine a light on it, and read the license plate, right?
And they didn't do that at all.
From Germany with love. They can't do that. So he cannot say that. He's basically trying to confirm a negative. And so right away, he's in deep trouble. So that's strike two. And then she says, well, do you know what is going on? And he says, we don't know. Okay. This is the best that the Department of Defense could do in that situation. But that was the end of the questions. and you leave the rest of the world to decide whether that makes any sense. And of course, it doesn't.
Now, Steve, how long had this been going on when she asked him those questions? It had been happening for months, hadn't it?
Months,
Yeah,
months.
I mean, how long is it going to frickin' take you?
So
figure it out. Yeah, interesting.
So he can't say there are drones, but they are. There are drones, but he can't say that. He can't, and they while there could be some foreign drones there, I can assure you that we're not talking balloons here now. We're not talking some weather surveillance balloon that springs a leak and drops down into the air flight paths and has to be shot down. We're talking about pretty advanced stuff, right? With some unusual lights, sometimes no lights, moving around the size of cars. No balloon. So this is,
Steve, it's swamp gas. Come on.
No way we can allow foreign objects like that over our bases. If that in fact were happening, the moment it came out, generals are being dismissed, chiefs of staff are gone, maybe the chairman of the chiefs of staff is fired, DOD personnel are cleaning out their offices.
Congress is beginning to change now.
Yeah. Now, in the Navy ship situation, because it's offshore, maybe in international waters, I don't know, I don't think it was, but whatever, it's offshore, it's at night. And so they did kind of allude to the fact, well, it could be foreign drones, right? And again, I'm going, okay, that's more possible, but again, you're going to shoot them down, my friend. That's the way it works. So okay, so this is just a mess, and so that happens. Kirby does this, and the thing slowly cools down because there was not much more to say. In other words, they could keep going to somebody or anybody, and some people were there. Was ask a poll. Matt Laszlo was bringing it up to some members of Congress. He buttonholes them in the hallway, and they didn't know. Okay, they could keep going back to the DOD and asking the same question, but overall, that was the answer. Now, I chide the media, right? I mean, if we were where we should be, in so many ways in this country, another reporter, maybe a big shot from New York Times, should have raised their hand and then said, Mr. Kirby, in all due respect, all three of those answers don't make any sense at all. What in the hell are you saying? Right? But they didn't do that. They don't do that. And so quiets down. Now the media starts shifting to the pending inauguration. Okay, I get that. The things kind of step back a little bit. As you say, some phenomena is still going on, which is encouraging. But the message has been sent. I believe what the ETs basically reminded them that we can do this anytime we want, and we can go on as long as we want. This isn't 1952. We expect you to get this done. All right. And so we've got all of this extraordinary, unprecedented activity going on down below. Hearing after hearing, witnesses coming forward, legislation being passed, enormous amount of media coverage. I think I ended up with 1,800 articles this year, or 1,500 this year, 1,800 last year, 3,300 articles in English language press archived on my site right now. You could read them all, covering all of this. And so there's no way out anymore. All right. And so now it's a question of who is going to do it. Now, I understand why Biden didn't do it. I understand why, Kamala Harris wasn't a president, right? Right. And the moment he drops out of the race, that goes, because we were on a pretty good track. And so the orderly process, or I call the orderly and appropriate process, we still had a chance to do that in late 2023 and early 2024. And what I mean by that is that the way to have done this is a major hearing in the Senate Intel Committee that might go on for days, extraordinary testimony and extraordinary evidence, allowing President Biden to step out and basically say, you saw it, I saw it, all of my advisors saw it, and I have made some calls. And we've got non-humans here, and obviously you're going to want to know more about that, and we're going to do what we can. That would have been the responsible way. That's the best way to do it. The chance to do that pretty much ended 2 or 3 months into 2024. I mean, we got this intense $14 billion election underway. That's how much it cost, by the way. 14 billion.
14 billion with a B. Huh?
With a B, yeah. And so the idea that kind of hearing was going to happen, but what we did get was more hearing from the Intel committee, and so the ideal way opportunity was gone. Now, where we are now is even more, I think, likely to generate disclosure, but not in the kind of way that I would prefer. And what I mean by this, it's going to happen in one of two ways. And I believe it'll be within 45 days of inauguration. I think Greer is saying that we're going to have it in 6 days, but it's not clear what he means by full disclosure.
Well, isn't he saying more whistleblowers are going to show up?
He could be meaning, he could be referring to witnesses, remember? Well, there could be witnesses or whistleblowers so incredible that it pretty much, and that's fine. But for me, there's only one definition of full disclosure. It has to come from the president. If it doesn't come from the president, it's not full disclosure.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
But still, so the situation is ripe, okay, very ripe, and something's going to give, and it'll go one of two ways. The less ideal way is for the president-elect to, whether he refers to it or not in the inauguration address, he calls up his newly appointed Secretary of Defense, his newly appointed Director of the CIA, his newly appointed Director of National Intelligence, okay, and basically says, I need some, give me info on this NIH stuff, this non-human intelligence stuff, the crash retrieval stuff. And so all they have to do is make a couple of calls, right, to people that are working underneath them. And maybe they'll get, I don't know, or some whatever, but somebody, a couple of people are going to say, yeah, I think that's true, sir, whatever. And bingo. Then Donald Trump can literally walk out in the East Room with the press and basically say, I talked to my CIA director and my Secretary of Defense, and they confirmed to me, we've got non-human tech, non-human bodies. We're not alone, right? There's ETs here, whatever. Done. That is disclosure. Okay, it's called unilateral disclosure. Now, the hearings.
You're saying that's probably the lesser desirable?
It's a little less ideal, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
But immediately the hearings will be put together. I mean, literally, committees are going to be falling over each other, trying to get witnesses up to the hill, and there will be hearings, okay? And it'll be done. But it's done the moment those words come out of the president's mouth.
Right.
The more preferable way would be for the new president to get in touch with the now Republican chairman of the Intelligence Committee, the Republican chairman. Of course, the House was Republican to begin with, right? And the Republican chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. They already got their chairs in the House, and basically say, look, let's get some hearings here. Let's get some people up here. Let's have those hearings, right? The bigger, the better. And so they bring them up. They hold the hearing. And of course, now he's sharing the glory at that point with these chairs. In other words, the chairman of these committees are Republicans. And so to the extent that they are chairing the committees that are ending the truth embargo, this is a huge political amount of capital. But it also then sets him up after the hearings to come forward and say, yeah, I'm following this. I've talked to people over the DOD and so forth. And the evidence is clear from these hearings. We're not alone, and I'm confirming that to you now. That's disclosure. That is, the advantage of that is it gives the public, the media, a little more time to get used to the fact of what's coming, right? There you have a little more time to realize, hey, this is what's coming here, right? Get ready for it. And the heads of state, the other heads of state, particularly of the 9 other nuclear nations and some of the major countries, will in that case move fast. I mean, they're going to come out right away and go, yes, we are aware of this. It is also true. We confirm this. All right. If he does it unilaterally, there's going to be kind of a pause, I think. And it'll be a little awkward pause in which a number of the heads of state are not ready to jump. They're not ready to back it up because the president is the president, right? He is a very interesting guy. He says what he wants to say. And they're not going to be sure if the Congress is going to back him or whatever. So they may hold off. It won't be long, right? But there'll be that little bit of a pause. and that it's almost a difference, a difference without a distinction, right? But either way, it is disclosure, and so I think that's where we're headed. I think it's a long time coming. It's 77 years since Roswell, approaching 78, and Donald Trump is going to be the disclosure president. He's going to be the first president to oversee the post-disclosure world for the United States. And then the question is, how is he going to handle the post-disclosure world? To what is he going to be able to maintain its extraordinary nonpartisan and bipartisan approach? That's remarkable. How bipartisan.
I hope so. The one thing that's brought us together finally is this subject, which in and of itself is really cool. But
it's one of the reasons I think a lot of the people in the House are embracing it. They don't want 4 more years of endless battle. None
of us do.
Yeah, most of them do. There's some that maybe thrive on it. I don't know, but most of them, they really don't need this. It's not making their life easier. I mean, people are squatting each other. I mean, both sides are getting squatted. I mean, it's nuts. And so this issue gives them a chance to work together in an extraordinary way, get a lot of press, a lot of attention, and it may then spill over into other things, and we may see a much, much more productive Congress. And that's just the beginning of how this could affect our politics, our foreign, both foreign, domestic and foreign, and the world in general. That's why they call it a new paradigm. That's why it's a paradigm shift. And so, and again, if the Trump White House really leans into the nonpartisan, allows everybody a piece of the action, and so forth, I believe that everyone wins, including the new president.
Yeah. Okay. So let me do a brief. By the way, my audience is absolutely loving this. This is officially, I'm going to say this, for me, for my channel, this is historic. This is the largest audience I've ever had so far.
Good.
So thank you all for your support. You came to the right man to listen to. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Steve. But Carrie, you and Mr. Bassett should do this once a week, and we students will just listen and learn from an intellectual talk. So they love you, Steve, and I do too. Let me ask a hypothetical just briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this might not be the best case scenario. I truly don't understand. I don't know. I don't know if any of us do know the international situation with crashed sites, etc. If something happens that we don't get presidential full disclosure, capital D, what would be to stop another country who might also possibly be working on reverse engineer? I mean, surely UFOs have been around the world. They have crafts in other countries. What would happen if someone else disclosed it first? Could that not harm the United States government?
Well,
what's the in and outs of that?
It's like in the Olympics, right? You come in second, you get a silver medal. Now, are you harmed? Well, no, but you don't have a goal.
Nobody remembers second place.
But nobody remembers who got the silver medal. You're absolutely right. So, no, the implications are quite significant, and in the circumstances as I best can assess, because I'm not an insider. I don't have people, talking to me in underground garages and giving me super secret stuff. Is this the non-authoritarian world? Meaning it's not China, not Soviet Union. There are those countries that are authoritarian, but these are the two big ones. The non-authoritarian world, it was very, very reluctant to go there. I think that Russia. Well, I think Russia knew about Roswell. I think there's some evidence that they had that information pretty quickly, because back then we were spying on each other. We were an ally. They were our ally.
Well, that's
at the end of the war, right? And so they knew about the Manhattan Project. They knew about Roswell, and so they've always known about it. But the authoritarian countries like that, this is not something that appeals to them. It is a massive world-changing, worldview-changing event that is going to take people's focus away from the great leader to the universe, to all the possibilities and these extraordinary entities with incredible power, technology and so forth. And it's going to be hard to get them back focused on the great leader and the political ideology. And so they just won't do it now. And that's still the case. The rest of the nations, particularly all of the what we'll call democratic nations, Western nations, whatever the hell, right? They didn't want to touch it. They didn't want to go there, and for a very good reason. The policy of truth embargo was formulated between essentially Roswell and the Robertson panel in 52, 53, about 5 years. So there was not a lot of pressure. Even though they put out a press release, they took it back, and everybody go, okay, fine. Then our government, which we love dearly and just defeated the Axis powers, said that it was weatherproof, no problem. So,
I see.
Yeah. So, but eventually, I assure you, the UK knew. Right? There's no question. It wasn't long before the other nations were going to know about Roswell. Right? I mean, this is what. Yeah. It was a press release, and everybody's got their connections and everything else, and so they're learning this. But at that time, the situation was very clear. The United States was the most powerful nation in the world. It was the greatest economy in the world, and by and large, that has never changed. Right, but the margin of difference has changed, and we were the bulwark between all of those nations and whatever threat the Soviet Union and eventually Communist China was going to pose. They couldn't defend themselves, right? They probably couldn't defend themselves. They all came together in a collective. The only nation that had the power to do it was us, and so. This being a massively significant national security matter, they just deferred to us. They let us know one way or another, it's your call, Mr. President, Mr. Truman, Mr. Eisenhower, whoever the hell, it's your call. We're going to leave that to you. Now, that doesn't stop the ETs from flying anywhere they want. It doesn't mean there aren't sightings and so forth going on in these other nations. True. And organizations forming and researchers doing everything there that they did here. But they were going to be even less responsive than we were, and it's still that way now. Over the years, some nations have taken some steps because they've all been under pressure. They've all had people coming to them. What do you know? What's going on? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And so France it did a couple things, and you had Brazil, Peru, Ecuador. There are a number of countries that kind of they set up a UFO thing in their air force and so forth. But the formal stuff from the government, no. China was known to have no problem with people doing UFO research. There was a lot of that going on. And Russia, Soviet Union, and Russia as well. But in other words, they're interested, they're following it. And if their citizens are kind of they want to have their own MUFON, they were okay with it because they had no concern that the researchers or interested people in their country were going to somehow blow this issue up because they control the public in those countries, and so if they tried to stop it, it would very possibly be more of a problem. So you had a lot of people in China and Russia, Soviet Union doing research. That's okay, but they have stayed out of it. Now, the closer we get to disclosure, all that's happening right now, because they're aware of all this, the more likely that China or Russia will step in, cut in line. And if they do, we're going to have egg on our face, a big, giant omelet, huge omelet, the size of Oklahoma on our face.
Speaking of eggs.
Yeah, speaking of eggs, right? Even bigger than that one. And so and I've said this countless times over the last 20 some years, unless the leaders of China and Russia are actually working for you, that they're getting a W-2 every year, because you're paying them a good deal of money to be your representatives. Unless those heads of state are working for you, they could step in line anytime they wanted to. But we keep rolling the dice. We're thinking, nah, they're not going to do it. Now we're getting really close.
We're getting to the point where we really ought to Do it. Hey, would you mind taking a question?
Sure.
Emilian from the UK would like to hear Mr. Bassett's take on all the predictions of something big coming soon. Thank you, BYP and Mr. Bassett, for tonight's show. Well, my response, not, I know it's not for me, but that's what this whole show has been.
Sure. Look, I'm saying roughly the same thing. I believe something very big is coming, but there's a lot of ways to say it. Okay, there, and if you need to be careful. If you're not, then it, in other words, I never do this. I would never, I'm never going to say that Donald Trump's going to end the truth embargo on January 26th, right? Or the ETs are going to show up in July of 27. That you don't want to do that. You want to project probabilities and so forth. You want to base it on assessment of what's happening. However, there is no question that the number of people who are having a very strong feeling something major is about to happen is growing, and these people are not silly. They're not just having fun or just trying to get a headline. There's a lot of people that have been in this issue that have a very strong sense that something big is coming, and I agree with them. And by the way, something big just happened. This UFO flap is big. All right, that's a big deal. True. And if the government, if we had already had disclosure, okay, meaning that everybody knew that ETs were here, and then something like that happened, we wouldn't be sending drones up. You'd be everybody running around in the press talking to people, meaning what's going to happen next? They're everywhere. Does that mean they're going to land? Are they going to approach the government? What's going on? But of course, we're not in that place. So I believe the outs. Now, the nature of things is such that all it would take is one slightly drunk Russian, field commander accidentally putting a tactical nuke shell in one of the guns, firing it off. And next thing you know, a nuclear explosion takes place outside of Kiev or something, just something like that. And all of a sudden, all of this stops, right? Or if China launches an invasion of Taiwan, all of this stops, okay? And there's a few other things like that. And over the years, we've had that happen a lot. And I'm not saying it's connected. I'm simply saying it's a very troubled, dangerous world we live in, and it keeps getting more troubled and more dangerous all the time. And so the trick is to get it done before the next thing happens, right? And now we're in a situation where
they might be recognizing that, you think? I mean, on the Hill in DC. I mean,
I think so.
Can't possibly think this is a very peaceful place right now on this planet.
During the period when we had a really good chance to get the Senate here and get the witnesses in there, set the president up, you had the escalation of the Ukraine war, and then you had the October 7th events in the Middle East. So it's like, it's just, can't do that. It's terrible. Where are we now? As the new president takes over, we actually got a basic, at least initial ceasefire in Gaza, and 3 hostages have been released. Now, it ain't much, but I assure you, it's not where it was back in October 2 years ago. And so that's good. We're having more and more talk about that Russia and Ukraine reaching a deal, right? That Zelensky is going to have to do something here. He's going to have to sue for peace. And while the war is still going on, and there's no real clear sense that that's going to happen. The fact is it's being talked about a lot. And because it's being, that's what you have before it actually happens. And eventually it has to happen. This cannot continue.
No.
Right? It's not about who's right, who's wrong. It's about how many thousands of people have to die in pursuit of something that probably will not be achieved. So you've got hundreds of thousands of Russians have been killed or wounded, thinking maybe they're going to take over all of Ukraine. You've got hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men and women either killed or wounded in hopes that they're going to drive Russia out. Right. Neither of these things. And so the price is simply becoming too much.
Too high.
So we're headed in that direction. Okay, so the situation is very different than it was 2 years ago. And so it's less likely that there is a intervening event, or at least if we get it done. Once disclosure has happened, it can never be undone. We are in the post-disclosure world for the rest of time. And so whatever happens after that is happening in the post-disclosure world, which is a case I was making for years and years and years. Look, guys, you keep looking for some excuse to not do it because this awful thing happened and that awful thing happened. Have you considered the fact that if you'd gotten disclosure done, maybe those awful things wouldn't have happened?
Wouldn't have happened.
You might have, because you're in a whole different place.
Get a little bit more proactive here.
They're very hard-headed, the government and the DOD. These guys are so narrowly focused: defense, security, military, war, whatever.
Well, and in some regards, we are grateful for that.
Absolutely.
But still, it's overdone in so many regards also. Go ahead. I just had a question and it came in and it went out. Keep talking.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I'm getting absent-minded. I'm going to be called the absent-minded professor if I'm not careful.
So maybe it's about to end. If we get disclosure, I think that could be very helpful in terms of the Middle East issue. I think it'd be extremely helpful in terms of the Ukraine issue.
We could push that narrative as an incentive, couldn't we?
You know, there's an effort to get a UAP caucus in the Senate. There's an effort to get a select committee in the Senate and in the House. There is another effort to get something in the UN. Okay, and these are just bubbling in the background, but they're totally appropriate. And the UN, of course, the UN could see a resurgence, a renovation, a reform that could change it dramatically, because this is the kind of thing that could do it. Nothing short of this is going to do that. The UN is like ossified. It's ill-suited for the modern era. This could give it a brand new life, but it needs changes. And so we might. I mean, and there's other problems. I mean, there's, in Azerbaijan and Yemen and there's plenty of awful shit happening where you've got people dying and starving and kids starving. You got genocides going on.
And don't forget Sudan either.
And Sudan, it's just the other stuff is so awful that this stuff is not getting attention. It's like, that's really awful. But like, look what we're dealing with here. So all of this is certainly going to be reassessed in a post-disclosure world. At minimum, we know that. And so the idea of using any of these kinds of events as an excuse to keep kicking the disclosure can down the road is completely counterintuitive. And one of the things that drives activists like me crazy, because you don't have to be a genius to see the government's making the wrong move here over and over and over and over again. Right. And hopefully this is going to stop. We're going to finally see a disclosure event coming from Donald J. Trump.
That brought up the question I was going to ask you about Mike Turner being ousted. Wasn't he one of those that was withholding protection from the whistleblowers? Wasn't he always killing the bill? And now he's
almost. Yeah. Again, the most public would know this, but that's why you have activists that have offices in Washington, D.C. that do nothing but follow this shit all day long. Mike Turner led the pushback against the amazing, comprehensive UAP Disclosure Act submitted in 2023 for the 2024 NDAA by Schumer. And when it came time to pass it, it was submitted as an act. They chopped it up in the Reconciliation Conference and took all the powers out of it. I think they would have got rid of it completely, but there was a hell of a lot of pushback on the internet because the internet is a big player in all of this, I assure you. And so they realized, let's don't overreach here. So they just took the powers out. So there where the archive was set up, believe it or not, you can go find it. There is a UAP archive at the National Archives, and some things are turning up there. I don't know, some love letters from a former astronaut, whatever the hell. And so it's there, but the power to really make this stuff happen, which includes the Presidential Review Board, which is essential here, they'll all take it away. Okay. And one of the leaders of that was Turner. Right. Turner and Rogers, because they are the ranking chairs of the Intel and the Armed Services Committee, and so they helped gut the bill. Okay, and then the second time around, when they resubmitted as an amendment for the 2025 NDAA, they resubmitted as an amendment, not an act. And I think it was I'm sure there was a reason in order to avoid. I think the reason they submitted as an amendment. And by the way, this was Schumer again, right? It came back resubmitted as an amendment.
Schumer.
When they submit it as amendment, it takes it out of the reconciliation process. Okay, it's voted after the fact, and so nice move. Except that under that procedure, there are several chairs of certain committees, probably members of the Gang of Eight, who have, under the rules, the ability to filibuster it, to block it. In other words, to go, no, right? And if they do, really nothing you can do about it.
Right.
And so it became known that somebody had done that. And an initial rumor was Rand Paul, which proved to be false. And that's unfortunate. But they picked on him, but it wasn't him. And we never really found out exactly who it was. But my guess, not guess, I mean, I've gotten info that sort of leans toward Mitch McConnell, which makes sense. But it could have been Turner or Rogers. But if it was Mitch McConnell, that guarantees that bill was that amendment was never going to go. And so what happened was that they had two choices. We had three choices. One was submit it anyway, force him to publicly block it, get that out there and have a fight. Okay, but bing, bang, boom. While you're heading into this incredibly significant election, they didn't want to do that. Okay. The other one was to withdraw it, but that would be like giving in, a loss, right? You're acknowledging. Okay.
Right.
And so what they did was, I thought, quite brilliant, and it didn't really get covered. I don't think you can even find a news article on this, but it's known inside. It's like an inside baseball thing. The word got out that one of the staffers of the dealing with the bill screwed up and missed the deadline. It was supposed to be submitted by a certain date, and they didn't make it, right? So it couldn't go. It couldn't go in, right? They missed the deadline. The dog ate my homework. And so they saved face in that way, and it didn't create an issue. All right. So when Turner's removed, we have to consider the possibility that is in service to Trump. Now, Johnson, I think, they brought up a couple of things that they didn't like about Turner, what he was doing. They were, I don't know, they weren't that impressive, but I forget what it was. I wasn't doing this or that. But, to remove a very long-standing chairman of a committee with that massive knowledge, that is a big deal. And it got a lot of press. And a lot of people really were not upset about it.
It did.
But on the other hand, what would justify it? Well, if Trump has made a decision, he's going forward on disclosure, and Turner was a guy blocking his stuff. He's the one that trashed that bill. Maybe you want him out of the picture. Now, I have no idea. So I'm just speculating.
Right.
But it's worthwhile to know that we know so much now about what's going on that we can actually view these things, right? So the Congress and the White House are starting to understand that the American people are now on top of this. There's plenty of representatives of them, and they're on top of it. And like you can't keep playing these games. And so that's notable about the fact that we can connect the possibility of Turner's removal with the ET issue.
Right. And then the other reason I wanted to bring it up, every now and then, like as in every minute of every day for the last several years, we have somebody out there saying, yeah, see, nothing's going on. Nothing's changing. It's the same old, disclosure's never going to come. But that's just not true.
That's okay.
In the 3 months I started doing the broadcasting, there have been huge changes going on, and this Turner one has got to be one of the big ones. Now, I know he's not the only one. It seemed like there was another gentleman there. There was always either one or two of them that were causing problems with that. But
Turner and Rogers. Turner and Rogers were, I think, leading the charge. I think, look, it's human nature. Okay, we this thing has been going on for so long. And there have been many attempts to maybe break it open, and we're thinking we got it and everything else, and then it doesn't happen, and you're disappointed, you get angry, and frankly, they're just fed up. They just don't want to invest in a positive outcome because they know they're going to get disappointed again, right? It's like somebody dangling a carrot in front of you, and they snatch it away. After about 20 times, they say, "Look, you're gonna get the carrot this time," and they're saying, "Screw your damn carrot." I get it. There's going to be some, but believe me, if you spend enough time on the social media, which I do, it's a lot of very, very positive, exciting posts that are taking place. People are starting to see the end of the tunnel here. And so the odd person that wants to, it just doesn't want to face it or wants to complain, perfectly okay.
Yeah. We've got another comment I'd like to recognize. Thank you, Andrew Hessing, for the super chat. Remember, I think he means if there has been success in reverse engineering, those that have the monopoly on these plus illegal government activities will be a problem. That's always going to be a potential. What's your thought on that?
Well, yeah. Let's see.
You get into
people that are, if you're looking for retribution, lawsuits, and people going to jail, it's not going to happen. However illegal it was, it's ultimately not going to matter. Because we're not talking about something trivial here. So disclosure of the ET presence is the massive world-changing paradigm shift in which everything is going to have to be re-examined, rethought, and we're going to have a full plate. Yeah. The entire human race has got to get up to speed on this. The information has got to come out of all the governments, information, documents, any ETs that are that are hanging out are going to have to be identified so we can all get to meet them. Whatever. The point is that is going to be a big deal. And so the issue is not legal so much. Really, the one issue that is probably significant enough that it's going to be addressed, and that is proprietary rights to the technology and the science. Right. This is less a legal action than a commons action. All right. That's what eminent domain is. It is you have something that is so important to the common good, that we're going to have to buy it from you. OK, and we're going to give you a fair market price. But this is not like a piece of land. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
So and that is why it was so significant that Schumer went there. He did not have to put eminent domain in the UAP Disclosure Act. Could have left it completely out. But he did it to send a really powerful message of how serious they were and try to get a reaction from them, and maybe use it as a bargaining chip. We'll keep the presidential review panel, but you can have we'll take out eminent domain, whatever. And so this is what to expect: disclosure, hearings. They'll almost certainly pass an amnesty act, a much stronger, not just a witness. Quote, additional witness protections, but full out amnesty. Now, what does that mean? It means that anybody that is involved in getting information out under the Disclosure Act, okay, somehow screws up and does something, you shouldn't have done that, right? And you broke the law, whatever. You meant well, but there's no charges. They cannot be charged. As long as they're trying to do what we generally want them to do, okay? Right. And that Amnesty Act will probably make it even more protection for, quote, whistleblowers that might come out. Right. And so you'll see that right away. You'll probably see a Truth and Reconciliation bill. Certainly, we're going to be, all of my colleagues are going to be lobbying for it, and I'll be lobbying for it. Now, Truth and Reconciliation is more than amnesty. It's much more than amnesty. Truth and Reconciliation is what you saw in South Africa. It did work. It worked very well. Desmond Tutu was the champion of that. Anybody in the U.S. government still alive who did something really bad, right? Definitely illegal, nasty, something that in just a normal setting, you're in deep trouble. You could go to jail for a long time. Anybody that did anything like that in service to the truth embargo, whether under orders or because they felt they had to make that decision, will get reconcile to society, but they have to tell everything. They have to provide all the information about everything that took place, why it took place, who ordered whatever, to the record. And once they have done that, they're reconciled. And so what that means is nobody's going to go.
The record is available for the public.
That's a good question. That is a good question. I would say, yeah. I don't know what happened in South Africa. Some of that stuff was really, really. We're talking ugly, 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 and to have put it out.
Well, we don't have a lot of beautiful shit hiding it ourselves.
Yeah, but I mean, the stuff that happened south, that was unbelievably awful. And so if they had put out this reconciled testimony, they could get killed, right? So it's possible that in that case, in this case, I think with maybe the odd exception, they might just go ahead and provide that information, possibly partially redacted. We should know everything, but there are can be some reasonable exceptions. And so if somebody's story fully recounted of something very, very nasty that they did in service of the truth embargo, and that person's alive, their family's still there, they may hold it back or redact it and the person is reconciled. They're going to go about their life, but people are not going to know this. So the person is not going to be run over or whatever. I would not have a problem with that. This issue is important. And what the government did was ultimately a mistake, or ultimately became a mistake. It definitely involved certain illegal activities, but then in our intelligence services break the law all the time, right? But we know that it's a part of the deal.
Stop action.
Yeah. So and people may file some lawsuits for damages, because there are a lot of angles to this and that might happen. I mean, you might see some suits settled. You might see some people getting some payment for harm that was done to them as coming out of that. But that's not so bad, and it's kind of probably actually it's a good PR thing. So you're going to see that. Yeah. That's about as far as I think it's going to go. I mean, if people are looking for blood and they're expecting show trials or the hell else, it's not going to happen that way. This issue is bigger than all that. It transcends that, and therefore, the less time we spend dealing with that low-level stuff, the more we can engage the transcendent new paradigm that's just been handed to us on a silver platter.
Yeah. Amen. Brother Ben. I think this one's kind of for me, simply because of the videos I've made, but you're welcome to tap in. Thank you for the super chat. Jay and Joe Show official. Hey, big fan. I've been watching you ever since the drone appeared. I just want to know, do you think the aliens will show themselves, and will they be coming here in bigger ships? I think this is kind of a hint of, I did a couple of videos on a gentleman named Cliff High, and then I did a video on a group called Farsight who are remote viewing with the aliens, and they say that the aliens have told them they will be showing in larger numbers and in larger ships. I honestly don't know. I mean, ultimately, that is the question. So I don't know how much rubber meets the road with Farsight. I don't pay a lot of attention to them, Jay, and I'm not trying to be rude to them or anything, but so yeah, do you think the aliens are going to show up more en masse in bigger ships? Is that how they're going to show up, do you think, or is there a different way they're going to approach this? Do you have any ideas on that?
No, I have thoughts about it for sure. Now, I can't go into places like Farsight and remote viewing, things like that, psychic, all that stuff. I can't go there. Right. Does that mean there's not truth there? That doesn't. It just means that I can't go there. I can't operate from that place. I operate from a pretty basic, platform, all that.
Sure.
So based on just what we know, and we know a lot about the ETs, by the way, a lot more than people realize, because most people are not aware of how many contactees have written up the accounts of what happened to them. And so we have a huge record of what's happened to contactees, which has not been properly reviewed because it would cost a fortune to do it. But they're out there. They're in the files. Post-disclosure, of course, that's all going to be brought forward, archived, studied, put in electronic filing. Anyway, so I believe that if you look at the whole pattern of this, going back to 45, that disclosure was inevitable and disclosure was a necessary and required thing before open contact. I don't know. There may have been open contact 4,000 years ago, but that doesn't count. It's just not the same thing. This is much more significant. Yeah. And so I think open contact is after disclosure. I put it at 2 years, simply because that's for no other reason than how long would it take for most of 8 billion people to get at least up to speed on this, right? All of the academics, the politicians, and so forth, go read all the books, study the stuff, get up to speed, right? As opposed to just sitting around and saying, well, anything that came before this, this is what the government's going to tell us. No, there's a vast archive, massive. And by the way, these are now being assembled in various places like Rice University and David Marler. There's going
to be they're getting a huge collection, aren't they?
They're amalgamating the research of these citizen researchers, God bless them, and there's still tons of stuff that could be and then the government has all the information too. So all of that's going to get out. It has to get out. People have to study it, learn it. I think about 2 years, we're going to be up to here, right, in the stuff. It's like, okay, we got it. Right? We know pretty much the history. And we've all watched Ancient Aliens, and we even know what happened 5,000 years ago. In which case, open contact is anticlimactic. It's like, no big deal. It's like,
I see where you, I've never thought of that angle, Steve.
So the government announces that we are having a discussion with ETs. We are communicating with them. And that is open contact. Now, does that mean they haven't talked to him in the past? No. Does that mean they haven't met with him? I don't know. Does that mean they don't have deals with him? I don't know. All right. That's still an area that can't be proven yet, and so I have to put it aside. But if we've had disclosure and then they're communicating with ETs, whatever happened in the past doesn't change the fact that this is the first open contact in human since the ancient times, and obviously since we became a spacefaring civilization. And so now we're in another place altogether. Yeah. Because we're not ancient Egyptians who need somebody to help us move big blocks around. Okay?
But we can walk like them.
Yeah, we can do that. So what we are is an advanced technological civilization that is already space exploring, that has way too many people, not enough resources, facing enormous problems, including the fact that we're a huge threat to ourselves with the nuclear weapons. We are all of that. And now we're in open contact with ETs. And so the subject matter, the discussion is going to be, I think, quite interesting and profound, and will determine where we're going to go next. So that's big. I mean, that's really big. And so I predict that. Now,
so your timeline is about 2 years from now, then?
2 years to open contact. In the meantime,
if that happens.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. In the meantime, they may accelerate their presence. I mean, look, we believe they have motherships. Okay, meaning ships that are capable of carrying other ships. Okay, fine. You don't see them often, but there's been a couple. You think we're almost certain they have bases, right? So they have bases here. Right. So in a sense, they don't necessarily have to come and go. Okay, but yeah, most of the standard craft are not particularly large, though there's some triangles up there that are pretty big, but they could be ours.
They could be ours. Yeah.
They can escalate the situation simply by allowing their regular craft to be seen more often, right? Be seen more profoundly. And that's definitely because we've had disclosure. And so people are now saying, wow, so I saw saucer the other day. And there's a photograph, and the government saying, yeah, that's one of theirs. And so that's escalating. But it doesn't mean we're in open contact. Bringing in a giant ship, big ship, that's just scary. I'm not sure that they don't need to do that. All right. At least before we get into open contact. Now, once we get into open contact and we start negotiating, which is exactly what's going to happen, we're going to start negotiating stuff that is going to impact our future and our present and future. And if the government is wise, it will not just tell us that we're in open contact. It will tell us what the discussion is. That would be the smart thing to do. And so now the whole world is participating in what amounts to a negotiating with off-world civilizations who have a presence here. Right? That's fine. Right? We have bases in other countries. That doesn't mean we're the citizen of that country. Okay. We just have a base there, right? Serving other purposes.
Well, so, and then the other idea here that we're hoping maybe is that they would be willing to talk with the governments. I've read some books where they're not interested in talking to the governments. They want to talk to the regular Joes like you and I.
In the pre-open, yeah, in the early days, right? And we're leading to before disclosure, yeah. But when I say open contact, I'm talking about open contact between them and governments. They're already in contact with individuals.
I see what you're saying. Okay,
I'm with you a lot, right? But it's closed contact. You know, middle of the night in bedroom, underground base. Open contact means it's like, and it could take any form, right? It could be email. It could be audio. It could be AI, our AI talking there, whatever the hell. It doesn't matter. As long as there's an information exchange that is acknowledged between us and ETs, that is open contact. That is the next milestone, in my view. And it is out of that we will finally maybe get out of this mess that we have created for ourselves. We have dug our civilization into a corner or dug a hole, and that threatens our existence. Now, we take that very personally, and we should. But it's worth knowing that over the last 3 or 4 billion years of this planet's existence, trillions of species have come and gone. Trillions of them. Correct. So like a species that finally runs its course, in this case Homo sapiens sapiens, is hardly a big deal. Right? We almost got wiped out in the Lesser Dryas and those events at that time. We came really close to being gone. And the Earth wouldn't have missed us. We'd been like, too bad, nice run, nice. And all we'd have now would be some, there wouldn't be humans here. There'd still be probably some primates and other animals, but overall we would be here. But so now we have obviously the power to not have that happen. We have the power to address that, which is important.
Yeah.
If the meteor that took out the dinosaurs, which was massive, and there's been some lesser dryers involved that too. The impacts have killed off huge numbers of species, millions and millions of them. Yeah. If one were to show up now, there's a good chance that we can deflect it. There's a good chance we can catch it, move out, and divert its orbit. So now we have the ability of avoiding that kind of thing because it's not good. Okay? That's good. That shows that we're advanced. We also have a couple of giant supervolcanoes, one of which happens to be in Wyoming, which is not a good place for us. And so if that baby pops to the degree that it has in the past, the United States would be much less than it is. And depending upon how much the rest of the globe is affected, we would almost be a third world country, and it would be like, come take us, right? Please come. I mean, we'd be awful. Now, it is not clear if we have the technology to prevent that. In other words, going down there and somehow redistributing that magma pressure so that it can't build up without possibly blowing it up, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm talking to the ETs post disclosure, I'd be bringing that up. Hey, you got anything in your toolbox about that? I mean, we don't want that thing to explode. Or can you assess it for us? Right? You have some tech. Tell us what the situation. They'll say, you got 5,000 years before that goes. Oh, thank you so much. But right now, I'm telling you, it could go tomorrow. That's why it was in 2012, one of the great scenes of all time. 2012 and Woody Harrelson. It doesn't get better than that. And so then we have other issues. The climate issue is real, and it's going to create massive destruction and loss of life and so forth. We're struggling with it because the economic cost is overwhelming, and we already are out of money. And so the ETs may say, that's not a problem. here's what you do, right? It's like, we got some tech here, do this, do that, you'll be fine. It's called temperature controlling the planet. It's actually theoretically possible. There's several ways to do it. And things like that. We are facing these kinds of massively destructive existential matters. And it just so happens, spurred on by, I think, the nuclear age of nuclear weapons, that we're possibly approaching open contact with ETs that almost certainly have the tech to help us solve those problems.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of the Prime Directive stuff that turned up in Star Trek. It was cool. I got the idea. It was clever, but it irritated me. They broke the Prime Directive every damn show. All right. They always broke the Prime Directive. Okay.
It's what humans do.
They would only bring it up if it served the plot somehow, right? But normally they're breaking that thing every time. And so the idea that extraterrestrials would provide information and tech to us so that we could not have to go through more or lesser dryas or whatever the hell, and most of the species being killed off and starting again, which is still life. I mean, there's always going to be life here, but it does seem a bit wasteful. And also that we are about to become a fully spacefaring civilization. There aren't a lot of those, I don't think. I think the vast majority of planets with life do not have spacefaring ability, and so that kind of is special. And we're part of the club. And so you're almost in the club here. So let's get your affairs in order before you screw it all up.
Yeah, right? I hope we can. Was it you or was it Sheehan who said the trick with this at that point is, do we fail to pull our heads out and lose our sovereignty because the ETs have to force us to not go to nuclear war? Or do we succeed and prove to them that, thank you for being there, we would have appreciated your help, but we did it ourselves anyway? And then they would welcome us with that attitude more than if they had to force us.
Well, this is an interesting point, worldview change-wise. They could just melt all the nukes down, right? They just fly around. Next thing there's no nukes. They're all gone. Okay, right. And this is a huge violation of our basic rights. We've lost our sovereignty in that moment. It's demeaning. It's depressing. It's upsetting. All right, and so one could imagine why they would prefer not to do that. Okay. There's also the possibility that if we are so, and we've almost had a nuclear war, or at least nuclear exchange a couple of times, their attitude could be, look, if you really going to do it and you do it, then you're not ready, right? It's like, right. Go clean up and we'll get back to you in 500 years, whatever the hell, and maybe you'll be ready then. It may be that it's not their agenda to force majeure this situation, that they're going to give us a chance to do this in a way that is more traditional, however they handle this, and not take over and do that. It's a big galaxy. There's a lot of civilizations out there. If we blow ourselves up, it's not like the galaxy is going to lose sleep over that. So but I don't know. I don't want to find out, right? We know that they turn them off.
Exactly. That's the point, right?
So, but because of the accident possibility, there is, if people get into this a lot, and I don't blame them. It's a nice place to go. If we actually had a kind of war escalation situation, where X does this and Y says, don't do that, and then X does it again, and Y says, you do it one more time, we're launching, and then we launch. Under that circumstance, maybe they'll intercept it. Maybe the missiles will suddenly become useless and just fall into the ocean. I'm sorry. I got it backwards. Sorry. If we do it that way, they may say, look, that's what you want, you got it. All right, we'll be back in 1,000 years and see how you're doing. But if an accident took place, or it's just an accident that kind of triggered it, but we really didn't want to do this, but an accident triggered it, they might very well intervene in that case. But I don't want to count on them intervening at all.
I agree.
You don't want to think that way at all. And people say, "Well, why you a pessimist? What, why don't you?" And I'm anything but a pessimist. The point is that the reason I don't want people to think that way at all is because it is a crutch. People that should be thinking about how in the hell are we going to get some nuclear non-proliferation treaty signed? How are we going to reduce the weapons more? How are we going to start reducing these hotspots? If you're thinking, well, the ETs will step in, your motivation isn't very great, is it? It's like I don't want to do that work. I don't want to negotiate that stuff. It's too hard. The ETs will stop it. So it's not a meme I want out there. It's not the way I want people thinking. They need to assume if we launch, we're done, and then decide what they're going to do about disclosure.
Story. Yeah. Here's another question. Thank you, Jay. Again, good super chat. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you. My next question is, do you think Donald Trump will expose the drones and say that it's from extraterrestrials? There's got to be a reason behind these drone sightings.
Well, as I said, I'm pretty sure there are drones. Okay. Now, he said that on the day after he was going to explain the drones.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen because, and this is, I'm not casting dispersions here. Right. He does this a lot. He makes a very radical statement that he's going to do this or do that, right? But he then doesn't do it. But he makes that statement for two reasons. One, to test the waters, to see how people react to it, all right, which gives him information, and to send a message. So let's take the Canadian thing. He makes these very strong statements about tariffs in Canada. Now, does that mean he's immediately going to do that? Not sure. But he did get a reaction. He got a reaction from them. Trudeau came down to Mar-a-Lago, talked to him, all right? And he sent a message so that when it comes down to it, he may end up getting an arrangement that's not as severe as people were worried about, but it is something that he wants. So it's considered like a negotiating tool, because I do not know how he could explain the only way he can explain the drones is to come forward and say there are drones, and because that's what they are. If he comes forward and say they're Chinese drones, he's got a problem. Yeah. If he comes forward and saying, well, they're hobbyists, whatever. There's just if it's our drones, the next question is, Mr. President, why are we sending those drones up there?
And
right?
That's unanswerable. Yeah.
And then the answer to that, if the answer to that is because the ETs are up there and that's the best they could do, then essentially he has explained it. So the only way that he can explain it on the 21st is if he, in fact, brings in the NHI component, which then accounts for it. All right. In which case he is basically done disclosure on day one. All right. And I don't think he would do it on day one. That's a little radical, but what is more likely is that he will send a message to the Department of Defense and the Air Force and the Navy and everybody else by just an allusion to it. In other words, allusion to disclosure in his inaugural speech, not disclosing, but just kind of acknowledging that it's in play, is a huge message. It's going to rocket through the entire government, and everybody's going to be saying, oh God, let's organize this stuff, get the files together. The UAP Disclosure Act is probably going to be resubmitted. They're going to pass it. The whole thing is about to happen. The president's behind it, and thus preparing the way, a message.
Yeah.
And then at some point, after he is in office and things are kind of in order and people have gotten, because it takes a while to run it up, then you can make your move. To do it on day one would be pretty chaotic. It would be tough. But is it possible? Yeah. The most significant thing, though, about what is about to happen from the standpoint of disclosure is that we will have a president in the modern era for the first time who is simply not going to roll over for the what do you call them? Anyway, he's not for the insiders and the big shots. right? The experts over the DOD, the experts, the intelligence agencies, and so forth, that'll come in with all the background, all the career stuff, and the diplomas and so forth, and say, Mr. President, and these may be appointed, even be appointees, but probably they're just the ones that are there all the time, and they're saying, look, it's not a good time. Not a good time. We don't go there. There's a problem here. Could happen there. Whatever. And we're giving you our most intellectual opinion on this. Most of the presidents over the years, every one of them knew there was an ET presence. I'm almost certain of that.
Yeah, me too.
Major briefing. They just know there's ETs here, right? And that's it. They didn't want to go any further.
Right.
He's the one president that would say, "I'm sorry. I'm gonna do it. I don't give a damn what you think. I hear you. I'm gonna do it. That's what I'm gonna do."
Yeah.
And do it. He's just that kind of person. Nobody else. Clinton wasn't like that. Bush wasn't like that. Carter, even Kennedy, even kind of approached it very, very kind of carefully. And only after we nearly had a nuclear.
Well, I mean, George H.W., the head of the CIA at the time, when Jimmy Carter asked him to tell him about it, he said, "No, I'm not going to tell you anything." He actually refused because Carter had seen a UFO himself. So, but
he wasn't appointed by Carter. So Carter did not appoint him, which pissed him off greatly.
Right.
But then the person Carter did appoint obviously didn't cooperate either.
Yeah.
So,
right.
In other words, call him a rogue president, whatever the hell you want to call him. It's just that the nature of who he is capable of breaking this deal.
Yes.
Right? This deal that, Mr. President, you really don't need to go there. We've got it under control. It's too big. You have a lot on your plate. Don't worry about it. We've got it, right? Whether they say it that way or like, you don't need to know, Mr. President, right? I
hope they tell it to him that way. He'll explode.
Yeah, we're not go. So he is capable of breaking that bond.
Yeah.
And so boom, and then he does it. All right, fine. So in that sense, he goes down in history as one of the most important leaders of all time.
Yeah.
Bingo. And his party gets a lot of glory, but the Democrats will have plenty of kudos. And then, to me, the most important question, this is when, again, the organizations like New Paradigm Institute and the other Soul Foundation and the other groups that are forming right now are going to be really important.
Yes.
And to the extent that they can influence the post-disclosure situation to help minimize it going partisan. And to what extent will the new president go along with that? In other words, will he partisanize the post-disclosure world? Or if he does, to what degree? That is a number one issue from the get-go. There's a million things that are technically on the table at that point, all kinds of possibilities. But a lot of those things will be significantly impaired if this issue gets heavily partisanized and bogged down in us versus them and so forth, because it is a global issue. Other nations are going to be involved and so forth. We're not going to be calling all the shots after that point. Russia and China will confirm, and so that is that's going to be, I think, a challenge to him. I don't think that I think that's not necessarily where he would normally go, but I think the power of the issue, the extraordinary significance of the issue will be such that I think he will subjugate some of his more fundamental instincts to that. He'll respect it. He'll respect this extraordinary history that he has participated in and make it as easy as possible for all parties of all religions and politics and so forth to be involved and have input and so forth. We'll see. This will be amazing thing to watch happen, and I hope I have a chance to, have a little role in there.
You will have a big role in there. I'm going to spout my mouth off you. I'm nobody, but I'm still going to yell, "Hey, go get Steve Bassett." I'll put you all the way in there, man.
Well, I know this, and we can maybe wrap up here if that's possible. We're at 2 hours. I have done 2,000 interviews. And I have a podcast list of 300, nearly 300 podcasts. And every single one of them is going to call me the day after disclosure, right? And want an interview. And I'm actually going to try to book them all. I mean, I will literally try to book every single one of them.
Holy Toledo, you're going to be a busy man.
And so it's going to be like, it'll be like, 4 days in, I've done like 80 in a row, and I'm going online, and I'm sitting there slumped in my chair, kind of drooling out of the side of my mouth going, okay, what do you want to know? I'm almost exaggerating, but believe me, I will do as many as
No,
I can.
You and myself and many others are going to be very busy after the day of disclosure. That's for sure.
And we should pat ourselves on the back, and the podcast army should all get together and party somehow. I don't know, we'll do that. They played a major role in this, came out of nowhere. Okay. One day we found out, wow, top quality mics and cameras and so forth are, available. And the internet is got massive bandwidth now. Let's all become broadcasters. Right. Yeah. And so boom. And it goes like this. And obviously this issue, they seized on it. Okay. They seized on this issue. Boy, if you want to do a podcast and you want to, but there are plenty of other things that are doing, they are getting millions of views. But this is the age of citizen journalism and citizen broadcasting.
It is
at a level that's almost impossible yet to understand how big it is. And whether if you're an authoritarian country or just a government trying to, play fast and loose with the truth, you got a problem. You're going to have to respect this. I mean, if you want to govern, you have to respect the fact that everybody can learn or talk about everything to everybody else. And so to the extent we get in the truth business and out of the propaganda business, this citizen journalism era will become extremely powerful and important. But we're still in transition, from a time when, hey.
Yeah. I hope they let us keep going on it. There's a lot to it, but
okay, let me do a couple quick promos.
Absolutely.
I will be speaking at the Conscious Life Expo, Feb 7 to 9 in Los Angeles, the one that's been there forever, has anywhere from 10 to 15,000 people. It's going to be a big deal. I'm sure we're going to honor the terrible, awful tragedy that's happened in Los Angeles, but the life goes on. I'll also be speaking many presentations at the Contact in the Desert. That's May 29 to June 2. It's
and where's that going to be at?
And that's in Indian Wells, south of Palm Springs, where it's been for a number of years now. Contactinthedesert.com. Check it out. A lot of the speakers are up. There's still some more, but it's going to be a very significant event. And let me tell you, it's going to be in a post-disclosure era. So if we'd had disclosure before the Contact in the Desert, can we just imagine what a celebration it's going to be? I mean, the energy level is going to be through the roof. And we will try to get speakers that are appropriate to the post-disclosure world, been involved in that. Hopefully we can get some of those as well. So I've got that. I think I may have an Albuquerque event. And then the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance I'm going to be speaking at that. Please check it out. If you have got a background in UAP era, citizen research, activism, books, whatever, podcasting, you consider joining the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. If you are a film person with skills, in other words, you're part of the film industry, production, direction, whatever, funding, consider joining the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance as a Hollywood founding member, as opposed to a UAP founding member. The more people we have like that, the more networking gets done, and everybody wins, including these people that have been working so hard for so long with so little money. They'd like to tap into some of that big Hollywood money, right, in order to help create the truth, right? There's that. And then Paradigm Research Group is now a nonprofit for the first time, has been for about 3 months, based in DC, 501c3. And as soon as I can raise $25,000, I will immediately, that same day, reserve the National Press Club to hold X Conference 2025, which will almost certainly be held in the post-disclosure world. So it will be the 7th X Conference. And obviously, I'm going to bring in speakers, including from political, to create quite an event. Because it's Exopolitics Expo, right? That's what it's about. It's going to be totally focused on that. And but in order to do that, I've got to clear $25,000 because I have to reserve and pay in advance for the space in the National Press Club. Once I've secured it and put in that money, I can cancel later with a schedule. But until that money's in their hands, I cannot set a date. So and I could hold it elsewhere. I could hold it at the Washington Plaza, but I know that this conference has got to be held at the National Press Club with the Washington Plaza as the conference hotel. So
nice.
That is open. Anybody out there, crypto, hit crypto early, whatever.
Let's do it.
Tax deductible, right?
Let's keep the momentum going. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So, by the way, that's paradigmresearchgroup.org, Kerry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That may have been it's org. But now com does forward. It does forward to the proper address.
All right. But .org, you guys. Yeah, let's go to .org. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Well,
and then check out newparadigminstitute.org. Lots going on there. It's a much bigger organization than mine. The Soul Foundation out of Stanford, the UAP Disclosure Fund out of San Francisco,
groups, yep,
and others that are forming. These are the post-disclosure entities that are going to serve your interests. They're forming now. They need support. They're all 501c3s or 501c34s. There'll be plenty of business conducted in the post-disclosure world, and plenty of money will change hands. No problem with that. But in terms of the what we'll call the public engagement, 501c3s are critical there. So the fundamental motivation is to serve.
Well, and this is wonderful because I have so many people in my audience who ask, all right, BYP, how do I get involved? I mean, where do I go? What do I do? And so I will leave links or links in my description of this video to these so that we can get involved, because there's a lot of people who want to contribute, and this is wonderful. This is what we're looking for. We want to network with you. Let's get the whole world involved. I love that.
And look, if you want to get involved in something, if you're willing to volunteer, you can get involved. There's almost nothing you can't get into if you're willing to volunteer. If you're chasing a paycheck, no. So in addition to providing funding, which was critical, I've got a bunch of people that want to volunteer for Paradigm Research Group. I just haven't been in a position to take advantage of it. Once the funding starts coming in, I'm going to be approaching them and getting them involved in volunteer support, which can take many forms, right? And they'll be involved in part of the deal. And then if I get a lot of funding, I might be able to actually pay some of these individuals. Now, and that's true of the New Paradigm Institute. Right. And maybe it could be true of some of the other organizations. If you're willing to volunteer, you can get directly involved. Okay, so you don't have to have a lot of money, just have a desire to be involved. And everything is remote now anyway, so most of these organizations help.
And it's not like these groups are asking for half of your paycheck.
Oh no,
$5 here, $5 there. If I could get all 750 people who watched this program tonight to fund up $5 each, that's probably realistically doable. That's $3,500.
But the real message that I want those people to do is talk it up with some of those people that did real well. Okay, they've done well in life. And in this, the interesting thing about America has got more billionaires in every country except I think maybe China. I'm not sure, but we've got all kinds of billionaires. We've got 10 billionaires. We got 100 billionaires. And we have lots of, and they give huge amount of money to nonprofits, right? No question, they do huge amount of money. And while some people think we got too many billionaires, I can appreciate that. The point is, they do give huge amount of money, but not to this issue. And the reason, of course, is all the stigma and the demeaning that the issue had to bear throughout the truth embargo. The government knew, to the extent that it could make fun of, demean, intellectually ghettoize this issue, the people who give lots of money to good causes are not going to touch it because they don't want the taint. All right. And so, but they're still doing that. And so all it's going to take is a couple of those very, very wealthy people we have in this country who give millions of dollars to that cause and millions to come in and say, look, you guys are involved in some of the most important stuff going. Here's 2 million, here's 5 million, here's 10 million. And they're going to literally help fund the transition into the new world. And so I'm putting that message out. It's not It's not an easy thing to get through, and it sounds a little self-serving, but understand the reason that we have not gotten that kind of support from these people who want to make a difference is the government absolutely stigmatized this issue to death deliberately and encouraged the people to do it as well. That stigma is almost completely gone. It really is almost gone. You can hardly find it. And so I think we're close to that kind of support. And so consequently, I'm just mentioning it so that,
it's all good. We've got to get the word out that this is a thing worth doing. And every now and then we'll have setbacks. And every now and then we're going to get our eye blackened, etc. Because in a way, this is a battle. But it's going to happen. I want to be on the good side, the right side. I want to be involved. And so I also want to just sincerely thank you. My audience has absolutely loved this tonight. I've been trying to keep up with the chat, and I so appreciate you taking your important time to share this with us, because, and I hope it gives you many, 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 many returns. I would love to have you back on my show at a later date, another time, and let's keep right on trucking and talking and raising funds and getting the word out and just growing together. I so appreciate all your expertise, Steve. It's been a lot of fun.
I appreciate it. Look, you're part of my podcast army. Look, if you have a situation where somebody canceled at the very last minute, you got a fair chance. You call me up, I'll do it. Right, most of the time, because I don't have any other things in my life. There's nothing else. No cats, no dogs, no kids, nothing. Right. This is all I do, and this is what I want to do. And so, if you have that last minute, you call me. I've told this to almost all the podcasters that I'm working with. So I'll anytime you want to. So let's see what happens tomorrow. Let's watch the inaugural statement.
Yep.
And then let's see what Greer comes up with. Let's see what Donald Trump may have to say about the drones. All I can say is I'm getting pretty fired up. And so if it goes our way, let's rejoice. But let's keep in mind that the biggest event in human history is about to take place. And to the extent that citizens can support nonprofit organizations that intend to serve them, we can shape how we deal with the aftermath of this event, to serve the common good. And if we don't do that, very powerful entities, legally, with lots of resources, will shape it for us. Okay, to serve their interest. And so keep that in mind, right? Most people understand that idea, but they haven't associated with ETs and what happens if we acknowledge and all kind of stuff. So we could have some pretty cool years ahead. All right, I got to go. Thanks. Until next time, my friend.
Thank you so much. We'll catch you soon, and we'll say goodbye to the audience. Appreciate all your support and love and care, and we will catch up to you just as soon as we can. Good job.
You don't need any downloads off my machine in this case.